He was just a mechanic drifting between stars until the Emperor summoned him for a task no one else could complete. But when Jace arrived at the glittering palace, he didn't find admiration. He found a cruel joke. The Emperor sent his own daughter, mocked for her weight and hidden away from glory, to serve as his guide. Yet in her eyes burned the spark of something powerful. What began as humiliation would soon shake an empire and rewrite destiny itself. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where are you watching from. Now let's jump into the story. The Nexus orbit never slept. Cargo skiffs slid like quiet minnows along the ring's spine, and the great embassies glittered behind mirrored panels. In a corner most envoys never saw, Jace Rowan rubbed conductive paste from his hands and told himself he would drink water before touching another capacitor. He did not. The workbench sang in a thin, metallic way that only he seemed to hear, a hum that told him when circuits longed to align. The workshop door sighed open. Ambassador Threll of the Vescari ducked under the frame, scales a deep violet sorrow. Translators rendered his chime speech as plain words. Human Jace, a device of the Emperor, has fallen silent. I am bound to it. I cannot let it out of sight. Jace nodded toward the stool. Watch all you want. Just don't bump the field meter. The object Threll revealed looked like a shell cupped by moonlight, pearly with a pulse somewhere inside it. A royal relay, he called it, direct to Emperor Varel. The station's approach corridor had bathed it in sharp radiation. Now it flickered and refused to speak. Jace took the shell into his hands with that careful patience he used for every tool, as if the device might be shy. For 2 hours he chased ghost currents. Vescari tech loved symmetry. The relay's designers had woven power like braided hair. The braid had slipped, though, and a sliver of noisy charge reverberated inside the lattice. Jace tuned the shield, realigned the matrix, and added a tiny loop that steadied the beat. The relay breathed, then sang. Soft blue light unfurled like a sigh that had waited too long. Threll's scales flashed gold astonishment. 30% stronger than before, he whispered. Our court technics tried for a week. It wanted to work, Jace said. I only got out of its way. The ambassador's hue shifted to the bright yellow of formal promise. The Emperor will know this. I'd rather he didn't, Jace muttered, too late to stop the compliment from becoming a comet. 3 days later, Station Director Lena Morrow appeared on his comm with the voice she used only when fires reached oxygen lines. Rowan, Diplomatic Bay 1, full uniform now. He made it to the bay in time to see a vessel slide in like a blade of dawn. Guards in star black formed 2 perfect lines. The air tasted of spice and iron. Emperor Varel descended with 4 golden eyes that weighed the room the way gravity weighs a world. Where is the human called Jace Rowan? His translator kept pace, barely. Lena nudged Jace into the open. He bowed like he had practiced in a mirror and hoped it looked intentional. You improved a royal relay, the Emperor said, stepping close enough for Jace to see the fine hairline patterns in the scales along his jaw. In 300 cycles, none have. Your Majesty, Jace answered softly. Sometimes I hear where power wants to go. Hearing power, the Emperor tasted the phrase. A human trick. His crest lifted to a curious angle. My flagship, the Dawn Spear, falls from song at high power. Court engineers fail. You will fix it. Jace glanced toward Director Morrow. She offered a small nod that meant this could change everything, or end it. When do we depart? Jace asked. Immediately, Varel said. Bring what you trust. Leave what trusts only you. He half turned, then looked back with a warm amber flicker that might have been humor. Succeed, and the Vescari word for gratitude will learn new size. Fail! The colors along his throat darkened for a heartbeat, then smoothed. Better not to fail. The guards closed around Jace like a river choosing a new path. The last thing he saw before the shuttle door sealed was Lena's face. Proud, a little scared, and stubborn as dock steel. A thin line of suspense drew tight in Jace's chest. Somewhere ahead waited a ship that refused to sing, and a ruler who granted rewards in thunder and in riddles. He cradled his worn toolkit on his knees and listened to the engine's quiet. If the dawn spear truly wanted to live, he would hear the wish hiding in its hum. As stars slid by, he told himself to drink water. He still did not. Vesker Prime welcomed them with light that moved through its mountains like breath. The palace rose from those mountains, not built but coaxed, a sweep of living stone that leaned toward music. Every column responded to the emperor's bloodline with slow growth, like coral learning to become a cathedral. In a receiving hall bright with hovering lamps, a side door opened and a Veskari woman entered with calm steps. She was shorter than many at court, her body full and steady, her scales a shade of teal that caught copper fire when she turned. The courtiers' colors flickered with quiet amusement. Emperor Varl's crest tipped in satisfied mirth. "This is my daughter, Princess Nera," he said. "She will guide the human." Nera bowed with practiced grace. "The court is a maze, Jace Rowan. I will keep you from the wrong doors." Jace returned the bow. "I'll try not to break any right ones." The palace hummed softly, as if pleased. They walked through corridors where walls remembered old songs. Nara explained gently that Veskari colors spoke the way humans raised eyebrows. Gold for delight, indigo for grief, amber for interest. She kept her scales calm but alive, a disciplined teal that told of self-control learned in bright rooms where jokes traveled like darts. In private, her tone eased. "My father enjoys presenting me as a companion to guests," she said, the translator shaping her words into warm vowels. "To some I am the easy laugh. They say my shape is too generous and my colors too strange." Jace looked straight at her and saw what the hall tried to ignore. "They have poor eyes," he said. "The copper in your scales makes the room look smarter." She paused, and for a breath her scales blossomed into a delicate rose-gold glow he had not yet seen. It faded quickly, as if she had tucked a secret back into a pocket. "You are kind," she replied. "Come. The banquet waits, and banquet rules are a galaxy of their own." The great hall filled with nobles who wore light like jewelry. Jace sat near the emperor, with Nera beside him. He ate carefully, trusting the dishes the kitchen had translated for his biology, and listened to talk that spun like silk around sharp points. An admiral with battle-scored scales asked about human engines on frontier worlds. A scholar wanted to know if old Earth oceans still sang with gulls. Jace answered with modest facts and a mechanic's humor, and Nera's quiet interjections rescued him when etiquette threatened to tangle his feet. When Emperor Varl asked about the Dawn Spear's troubles, Jace spoke slowly. "It sounds like your ship contains pieces from many makers. Each tech has a rhythm. If the rhythms clash, a small argument can become a storm. Your diagnostics might not hear it because the pattern is new." Amber interest sparked along the Emperor's throat. Across the table, Chief Engineer Mailer lifted his chin, half skeptical, half curious. "Tomorrow," Varl said, "you will test this idea. If you are right, the ship will sing again. If you are wrong, you will learn why, and learning is not failure when the lesson remains." The hall warmed. Wine chimed in crystal bowls. Somewhere behind the music, laughter rustled like leaves, some of it at Nera's expense, some of it simply the court enjoying itself. Jace felt the old heat of anger he knew from childhood, when kids with sharp mouths picked their favorite target and learned to whistle. Nera's scales stayed composed, a lake under wind. "Do you miss your workshop?" she asked him softly. "The bench," he said. "The way the air smells when a fix is about to work. The honest click when a stubborn part gives up and says, 'Fine, you win.'" "Honesty," she murmured, "is rare at court, but it exists. Sometimes it hides in people others choose not to see." They left the banquet under a moon that painted the palace silver. Nera paused at the door to his guest chamber. "Sleep while the walls sing you their quiet song," she said. "In the morning the dawn spear will ask its questions." When she turned away, her scales caught a ribbon of rosy light again. Jace watched it vanish like dawn behind a cloud, and wondered how many times she had taught herself to dim, simply to ease other people's comfort. He lay awake longer than he meant to, listening to the palace hum. The sound was not unlike a heart that had learned to steady itself after public laughter. He smiled into the dark and finally slept. In orbit, the dawn spear waited like a poised note. Shuttle windows filled with iridescent hull, curves flowing into hard geometry where weapons slept. Jace and Nera stepped into a reception of engineers and security, their colors polite but watchful. Chief Engineer Mailer's bronze scales held a restrained gleam. Systems Scholar Tavi carried 3 tablets and a look of permanent curiosity. Captain Rin of Security wore storm dark hues that suggested a job that tolerated no daydreams. "We hold at 30% power," Mailer said as they walked. 60 is stable but wasteful. Beyond 70, systems argue until the argument becomes a siege. "We'll need silence," Jace replied. "The right kind. The kind that lets you hear a whisper before it becomes a shout." In the control core, light maps hovered like living diagrams. Jace stood with palms on the railing and closed his eyes for a breath, the way he always did before testing a guess. "Allow a complete shutdown," he said. "Let the ship stop remembering how it always fails." Mailer stiffened. "Restart cycles cost hours and reputation. A few hours now, or a lifetime of almosts," Jace said. He glanced to Nera. She lifted her chin. "I authorize the shutdown," she said, and her tone left no safe place to hide protest. "If we fear a pause, we fear hearing ourselves." Systems dimmed one by one. The ship's hum fell to a heartbeat, then to a breath, then to a stillness full of attention. Jace placed small, stubborn sensors at junctions where subsystems met like neighbors who smiled too wide. Nera carried the last 2 without being asked, her movements sure. "Watch here," Jace told Mailer, pointing to a reader. "If I'm right, when we bring power up, you'll see 2 rhythms trying to occupy the same chair." They restarted. Numbers rose. At 40%, a tight interference pattern appeared, delicate as a spider thread. At 55, it grew teeth. By 68, it snarled. "There," Jace said, calm and a little in love with the puzzle. "Dreen-type quantum feed hates your Vescari distribution lattice. They kind of agree at low power, then throw dishes at each other." Tavi leaned close, her scales flickering to a thinking blue. "If we change the lattice, we break 15 other agreements." "So we don't," Jace said, sketching fast on a tablet. "We place a pulse buffer in the doorway, a polite bouncer who keeps the rhythms from stepping on each other's toes. Doesn't slow the music. It keeps time." The design looked simple because the best fixes always did after someone bled for them. Mailer stared, then nodded once. "Build it?" For hours they worked, Jace cutting and rooting, Mailer allocating teams, Tavi translating theory into safe thresholds, Rin keeping security's distance but not its eyes. Nera ran parts, asked precise questions, and answered ones the engineers didn't know they were asking. When they powered up again, the pattern held steady like a bird riding wind. 70% passed, 80 grinned, 90 sang. At 100, the Dawn Spear became what its builders had hoped. No longer a sullen masterpiece, but a living engine that knew itself. The control core filled with color. Mailer's scales turned a clear, triumphant gold. He inclined his head to Jace with a sincerity that could not be faked. "The ship is ours again." The main display bloomed with Emperor Varel's image. "Report," he said. Mailer answered, voice low with awe. "Full power achieved. Systems optimal. The human's pulse buffer resolved the conflict and improved efficiency 12%. The Emperor's colors spun through pleased shades. His gaze moved to Jace. "You hear what we do not. Good, return. We will thank you loudly." That night the palace became a lantern. Dancers mirrored constellations across the floor. Musicians coaxed light from tuned crystals. Nobles who had sneered a day before found new interest in human hands that could teach stubborn ships to sing. Nera stayed beside Jace like a compass set to true. The Emperor's humor surfaced again, warmer this time, yet edged with the court's old habit. "Human Jace," he said, "your reward may include what pleases you. My daughter has kept good watch. Perhaps her company could be permanent." For a breath, talk stopped. Color shifted like a tide that didn't know if it should advance or slip away. Jace felt the room tighten, then chose plain truth. "Your Majesty, I am grateful for every kindness. But a person is not a coin. If Nera ever walks beside me, let it be because she chooses the path." The Emperor's crest stilled, then lifted. He studied Nera with a father's eyes and a ruler's calculation. Her scales settled into a calm glow that meant she would not be ashamed of being seen. She turned to Jace and said softly enough for only a few to hear, Thank you for using doors with handles and not keys. The hall exhaled. Laughter returned, but this time its warmth was honest. Beyond the lights, someone watched with a colder hue, measuring change and disliking it. The someone had a name, Admiral Sarek. His scales favored the hard blue of duty, sharpened too long on one idea. In the throne room before the whole court, he spoke without sneer but with iron. Your Majesty, the human has touched our fleet's spine. Alliance is possible, but trust must be sealed. I propose the oath circuit. A quiet fell over the hall. The oath circuit was legal and old. It curled into the brain like ivy and blocked certain betrayals as neatly as a sealed door. Jace felt a cold breeze that had nothing to do with air. Nira's scales dimmed to concerned dusk. Emperor Varel turned the thought in his hands like a stone. It would answer my admirals. It would also unmake a part of me, Jace said gently. I will never ask your people to be less than themselves. Please don't ask it of me. Nira stepped forward. There is another path. Let the human claim the challenge of honor. A test by skill, not by chains. Sarek's eyes narrowed, but custom had its bones. Name your trial. Jace looked at the hall's living ceiling, then at the faces that had learned to watch him with something close to hope. I will build a guardian for the Dawn Spear. It will refuse sabotage from any hand, including mine. If I can make a defense I cannot trick, then my intention is proven by its success and my limitation. The proposal traveled the court like a new chord. Some frowned. More nodded. The Emperor's colors brightened. Accepted. 3 days, those days cut and flew. Jace mapped the ship's nervous system and wove a learning loop that listened for wrongness the way he listened for music. Faster, and with no vanity. The Guardian examined signatures, traced intentions in behavior, and locked gates when patterns bent toward harm. It was not cruel. It was simply sure. Tavi tried to break it with puzzles and decoys. Mailer tried brute force and delicate lies. Captain Rin tried the tricks security professionals whispered over coffee. Jace tried to fool his own design because if he could, so could someone worse. On the 3rd day, the test began. Red team swarmed. The Guardian warned. Adapted, sealed. Then opened again to honest work. Alerts sounded when they should and slept when they must. Engineers, not politicians, delivered the verdict in a room too practical for theater. It holds, Mailer said. We cannot find a way through without breaking the ship itself, and the Guardian will not allow that either. Tavi lifted her eyes from her tablet, awed. It feels like a careful friend. In the throne hall, Emperor Varel stood and let the living stone carry his voice. The challenge is met. Our ships will keep their songs. Our guest keeps his mind. Admiral Sarek, are your fears answered? Sarek's colors shifted through a reluctant gray, then steadied. They are addressed. Nara looked at Jace, and the rose-gold warmth returned like sunrise pouring into a quiet room. The court waited, but their waiting was softer now. Your Majesty, Jace said, humans have a custom. When two people consider a life together, they first spend time learning each other's rhythms. We call it courtship. I ask for that time with Nara's consent. And do you consent? The Emperor asked, turning to his daughter. Nara's smile was small and real. I choose the path where I am seen. The month that followed held less music and more truth. Jace taught day classes with Veskari engineers. Hands dirty, laughter quick. Mistakes welcome. At night, Nira showed him corners of the palace no tour voice described. The memory garden where old scales were stored like stained glass. The bridge balk where children practiced light drums. The quiet room where the walls sang a lullaby only the royal bloodline could hear. They spoke of duty and desire, of how courage sometimes looks like staying and sometimes like leaving. They learned to read each other's pauses. On the last evening, they stood in a courtyard where the crystal trees threw soft colors on the stone. Emperor Varel listened, then nodded as if accepting news he had expected since the day a human had spoken of doors with handles. Very well, he said. We will make something new and let it teach us. The union ceremony mixed water and light. Jace offered a simple human vow, to choose, to listen, to repair what time and pride might fray. Nira answered with a Veskari hum that resonated in bone, a promise to keep curiosity alive, even when fear asked for easy answers. The court watched, some with tears bright as coins, some with guarded hearts that learned a millimeter of softness and then pretended they had not. Years turned like patient gears. A ship named Bridgelight set out with envoys from a dozen worlds, not as a battle crest, but as a welcome sign. On its observation deck, Nara stood with Jace and a child who loved to press her palms to the glass and count the passing freighters. The girl's eyes held sunrise, and when she laughed, the sound made strangers feel they recognized a song from childhood. "Remember the day your father sent you to guide me?" Jace asked softly. Nara's scales warmed to copper and rose. "He called it a small joke," she said. "He was wrong about the size. Below them, the palace kept its habits of light. New patterns had been etched into the living stone. Notes from the Dawn Spear's restored song. Lines from the oath that was never forced. A simple handprint in pale crystal, where a princess once paused to breathe through laughter that wasn't kind. The court had learned something too, that power is loud, but respect is what keeps beams from cracking. "More worlds to explore," their child whispered, forehead against the viewport. "And more ways to listen," Nira answered. Jace wrapped an arm around them both. "Sometimes a cruel laugh starts a story. Sometimes a choice answers it. And sometimes, when craft and kindness hold the same wrench, even old halls learn a new tune." The conference bells chimed. Light traveled across the ship's hull like a blessing. The story that began with a mechanic hearing a relay's shy pulse and an emperor trying to be witty ended here. Not with a curtain, but with a door that opened and kept opening. Viewers who stayed until this last quiet beat would know. A joke can be turned into a bridge when someone brave decides the punchline is not the end.